everybody. Welcome back to Drunkish. It's been a day since I've talked to, and you guys have listened to Jaime Hrobar. But where we left off, I can tell you because it just happened a second ago, was your second marriage, sitting at dinner. I'll say he's made a decision to start drinking again. You guys had a period of a couple of years, and he left it to you to make the decision what you wanted to do. So you decided that you were also going to drink. I want to just go back to that moment for a second because I totally get it. Like he's basically saying, I feel like you're at a crossroads and you're like, obviously you made the wrong decision, but I could completely see where you were coming from because you're basically either you're going to be lonely and being sober by yourself and your marriage isn't doing great, or you can give up on that, be what maybe in your mind was like, let me just be a normal person who is not this like having to do sobriety and do all these things, right? Plus he's fine or says he, so I could see that you were like, okay, I'm going to go along with it. Did
Yeah,
did drinking together help your marriage?
no, no,
Shocking.
it didn't. No, it didn't help it at all. As a matter of fact, no, not at all. But that is also like this delusion I think that I carried into my sobriety is that I thought because I was in a marriage, like I've got to be, I'm a team player. We're either doing this together or we're not doing it together, right? Like I couldn't just do sobriety for me at the time. I didn't I couldn't wrap my head around that, I guess. And so yeah, in that moment, I made that decision to have that martini, and I'm telling you, I was like salivating over the thought of it coming to the table before they even had a chance to like skewer the olive with a toothpick. There was just the minute I knew that it was coming, that I had ordered the drink, there was just this immediate like, because for me, like I was just in so much pain, and I wanted that feeling to go away. And I knew how to make it go away immediately. I knew I could anesthetize that feeling. But the thing that I think is so interesting, excuse me, the thing I think is so interesting, we talk about choice and decision. And so I have this story that I like to tell about this time that I had an allergic reaction to hot tamales. And I love hot tamale candies. Well, I don't anymore, but I used to. I thought that they were so good. And I bought myself a box one day when I was buying like edible reinforcements for my son for his therapy. And I got home and I'm popping these hot tamales in my mouth. Um, and I started having an allergic reaction to them. And I had them before, but I started having this allergic reaction, and my throat started closing, and my cheeks start looking like I've had my wisdom teeth out. I mean, it's happening fast. And so I drive myself to the hospital, which was foolish. I should have called an ambulance, but anyway, I drive to the hospital, and they shoot me up with all of these medications and everything, and they tell me that I've had an allergic reaction to these hot tamales, and I should never don't ever have them again because they could kill you. And the funny thing is, since that episode, I've never once walked into Target ever again and been like, man, I could really go for a box of hot tamales. I don't. Because I don't have a mental obsession with hot tamales, right? And hot tamales don't do anything for me. Alcohol did something for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let it do to me what it did to me.
No, it's
So,
so true. That you could also say that about, when I used to hear in my food program, not that I'm in one currently, but I should be. But when I used to hear like, I'm not going to drive to 7-Eleven for broccoli at midnight, when I'm
yeah.
craving like dessert or ice cream or sugar, I'm not going like, oh my God, I've got to have some Brussels sprouts. I don't care. I'm going to leave my kids at home with no babysitter and I got to get those Brussels sprouts. That's never happened.
Yeah. No, never happened. Yeah, so I love that story because for me that really talks about the lose for me. I had lost the power of choice in drink. I just had. And today, like I mean, I can choose not to go have hot tamales. I never chose to have hot tamales again, ever. I had no, I have a mental defense against hot tamales. You know, I didn't have one against alcohol.
So you drink, your husband's drinking, I'm assuming. Oh, and did your son get into that hospital?
He did. He got into the hospital, and they were able to reduce his problem behavior by over 85%, which was a miracle, quite frankly. They saved his life and ours. Sorry, they saved his life and ours. And I was actually, when he was at the hospital, that was actually when I was dry, which was really amazing, right? But I think that's a great testament to what I was talking about earlier. It's like my external circumstances don't matter, because that was a very trying period. I mean, I would get on a plane once a week. I would fly to Baltimore from South Carolina, and I would spend half the week with him in Baltimore, and then I would be here half the week. I lived in the Ronald McDonald House while I was there.
Wow.
And so, and I didn't pick up a drink while I was there, and my heart was breaking. It was breaking, watching all that he was going through, and knowing that, he was there. I mean, he needed to be there, and it was the best thing that could have happened to us. But I was not drinking. That was before my relapse. Yeah. So,
And
um,
was he a teenager at that point?
he actually turned 13 while he was there.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and
Okay.
he's 21 now.
Okay. When's his birthday?
July 2nd.
Oh, okay. Mine's July 5th. Yeah, because he's close in age to my daughter, who will be 21 in November, in a couple months.
Okay.
But anyway, okay. So how long was he in the hospital?
He was there for 4.5 months. A typical stay at that hospital is about 4 to 6 months. So,
So now, did you start drinking when he was already back out of the hospital or while he was in the
yes.
hospital? Okay, so he
No,
comes
I
back
started.
out, he's
Yeah.
doing better. You start drinking again.
Yeah.
Then what
Yeah.
happens?
And so the next year and 2 months are an absolute train wreck. Again, more blackouts, more reckless behavior, continued spending, just awful. And one night, my husband and I got in a giant fight, and the neighbor even came over. To there was nothing physical or anything like that. It was just, we were loud, we were loud, and the neighbor came over to try to be helpful. And the next morning, I got up and I came downstairs, and I cracked open a beer. It was early, and I cracked open a beer, and my husband said, "I thought we weren't doing that anymore." And I said, "Oh, I
Wait,
had no."
but hadn't he gone back to drinking?
Yeah. So we had been drinking. My behavior was really, off the rails. And after this fight that we were having, I guess both of us must have decided at the end of the fight, or something with the neighbor. I don't know. I guess we must have made some kind of pact that we weren't going to be drinking anymore.
Oh, okay, that you didn't
And
remember. You didn't
I didn't
remember.
remember. No, went right over my head. And so I got up, I cracked open this beer, and he popped his head through the sliding door, and he said, "Hey," he said, "I thought we said we weren't going to do that anymore." And I said, "Oh, I didn't get the memo." But again, I'm a team player, so I dumped it down the drain. And essentially, I was white knuckling sobriety after that for a handful of months. And I have like this philosophy, that when shit's going sideways, just throw a house at it. So we, despite the problems in that marriage, and being, a half a second sober, we decided to buy this house that I'm sitting in right now. So I bought this house, and about 2.5 months after that, almost 3 months, he decided he didn't want to be married anymore.
Good timing. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. So I found myself newly sober again, with, 2 children, and in this new house. and my marriage is coming to an end. So basically, I knew that if I didn't hurry up and uh, get back into, for me, if I didn't get back into 12-step recovery, I knew I was going to drink again. I knew it, and I was terrified. So I crawled back through the doors with my ass on fire, and I was literally willing to do whatever.
So did you have any support around you at that time? Because you hadn't been living where you were living for that long. You hadn't been doing a 12 step. So you must not have had like, I mean, that's a tough thing.
Yes, it was very hard. I have some wonderful family, very supportive family here nearby, and also back up north. And everybody just sort of they rallied around me and helped me in every way possible. I'm so incredibly grateful because while I didn't burn that house down in New Jersey, I was not that was not successful, thank God. I did burn my life down. I had burned it down, period. And so people stepped in financially, they stepped in to provide emotional support. Everybody was here for me, my family, and I am so incredibly grateful for that. I otherwise I never would have made it through. But I did get into 12. I got back into 12-step recovery, ready to do whatever was suggested to me to do.
It's interesting. I feel like you seem like a prime person for rehab. And
Yeah,
but
that's funny.
I
I've
didn't
always
do
had a
rehab either.
resentment. Yeah, I've always had a resentment that I was never able to go to rehab.
I wrote about
I
that in the book, right? The people that
yeah,
I was like, yeah, it must be nice
yeah,
rolling in here
yeah,
with your like nice boots, like, packed some stuff up for rehab. And yeah, I didn't get to do
yeah.
that. I was like
No,
parenting my kids, dragging myself into meetings and just like suffering.
yes, no. That rehab was not an option for me. Not in this life that I'm living. So what I did do was, I made a meeting every day. I was going to meetings every day. I was consistent with that. I cornered a woman immediately my first day back, and begged her to be my sponsor. God bless her. I was batshit crazy, and but she agreed. She was kind of like, well, why don't we just like see how it goes, because it was
That's what I do.
I sat down with her. I mean, probably within 2 seconds, I was like trying to catch her up to speed on everything that was going on in my life, and she was like, "Whoa." But I'm very grateful. She taught me how to be a woman of grace and dignity today, and how to like the person that I see in the mirror today. And that's a gift because I hated her. I hated the woman that I saw in the mirror. I
I thought you
did.
hated your sponsor. I thought you
No,
were like, I
no.
hated her. Yeah.
Well,
No,
I hated when she would say, God's in charge and it's all God's business. That I hated, but I've come to realize that it's so much better when I'm not in charge. I run a very tight shipwreck.
that's a good one. I've never heard that before. So,
Thank you.
okay. So you start the sobriety train again and
Mm-hmm.
you're what's different about it at that point? Do you think, because I hear this a lot and I do believe it. I think there are a lot of sober curious people listening to this, and sometimes it's just nice to hear people's stories that sound like way more fucked up than we are, right? And
Yeah.
for me, when I was newly sober, I thought I was under the impression that I was very high functioning. So
Mm.
you knew at that point, like I'm a low functioning drunk. Like I need to get sober. For my qualification for what makes somebody low functioning was, and I've said this on many episodes, but like I did drive drunk with the kids in the car. For some people, they see that as like, yeah, but nothing happened. Like I didn't have that consequence of, I didn't get a DUI. Nothing happened. I didn't even have a fender bender. I only drove like 7 minutes home. But for me, it was like, oh, I'm 42 and this has been going, I was able to have that moment of this has been going in a bad direction. I
Mm-hmm.
have not been able to like turn this car around, not one time. No,
Yeah.
despite how hard I try. But when I would go to 12-step meetings and hear people's stories that were much more drastic than mine, it was very easy to go, well, I'm not like that,
Hmm.
So I think it's interesting that everybody's bottom is different. For me, the shame was so great. And I still like, I can totally relate to you just of like, it was hard to look in the mirror because I was suddenly like, I'm a person who drives drunk with kids. Like I'm that person. So either I stop drinking 100% because I cannot drink safely, or next time it'll be worse. I just knew that for a fact. But it's interesting to me that, like, for the first probably year, I compared myself to other people's stories that were worse. And I was like, and I'm so happy that I was able to, that I had a sponsor at that beginning point that was like, that I would come to her and go, I'm not as bad as these people. And she'd go, okay, then you're not. So, but do you want to drink?
Right.
Well, no, I don't want to drink. But like, and she's like, have you ever been able to drink? No, not really. Like, does it ever work out well? No. Then who cares? It doesn't matter. And
Right.
she just had to keep saying that to me though. But because, and I'm just hearing in your story that you've had other bottoms. Like nothing more dramatic happened, correct? Or did something more dramatic happen?
No, that's about as dramatic as it got. But one of the things that I heard early on in sobriety that really helped me, and something that I try to encourage the women that I work with to do was, I was told, try to identify and not compare. And they told me, the more you see you find your head going like this instead of going like this. They said, you're on the right track. And so I tried to really identify with the way people, the way they felt, the way they thought, the way they drank, all of the way they behaved, all of those things. Because I would get up in the morning and I'd be brushing my teeth, looking in the mirror, going like, you know, oh my gosh, you're not going to do it today with these pounding hangovers and everything going, you're not going to do it today. Today, you're not going to do it. And I meant it when I was saying it, and I hear that over and over again, right? I meant it when I was saying it. If you had me take a lie detector test, I assume I would have passed because I meant it. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it on my own. But yeah, trying to just identify and not compare has made all the difference for me. And like you said, there's all different types of bottoms, right? Like just I was, I still had my children at that point. I still had my house, um, but I was absolutely emotionally bankrupt inside, and I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand myself. I couldn't stand being in my own skin. I could never. My whole life, I couldn't sit still. I just was never. I was never comfortable in my skin, and that just got worse and worse and worse as my drinking progressed.
So, do you think that when you got sober this time and started going back to 12 step, did it make it easier for you to just go, I'm going to just believe in a higher power?
Absolutely. What I did was I did not believe when I came back that I didn't. I was definitely an atheist when I showed up. But what I did believe right away was that other people believed. That was clear to me. And not only did they believe, but they seemed to be, most people seem to be relatively content, and they seem to be leading rather purposeful lives, and they were going through um, life. I say life because for me, that's good and bad, and everything in between, the whole thing. They seem to be doing that successfully. And I'll never forget early on, there was a woman that was talking about her son, and he had been murdered. And this woman was sober. And that was it. Like, I was never going to find another excuse. There wasn't one I was ever going to pull out of anywhere. The game was over. This woman was happy, and she was staying sober, and she was showing up for life. And there were just so many strong examples, strong women in sobriety that were there for me that I went all in. So I was willing to believe that they believed, and I was willing to take direction. And the first thing they told me to do was to pray. They said, we want you to pray. And I said, I don't know how to pray. And I was told to just say please and thank you. And that's how I got started.
Well, that's great. So did you feel that that sobriety was different than the previous ones right away, or was it a struggle at the beginning? And what was going on? So you're single at this point, going through a divorce.
Yes. I was going through a
I'm
divorce.
assuming you don't have a lot of help with your kids.
Right. So I was going through a divorce, and we were working out custody arrangements and all of that, and family was helping, and my older son was still in therapy. We did have he had some regression in his behaviors, and so one of the most painful decisions that I've ever had to make in sobriety, or in my whole life, was to place him in a residential facility, because behaviors were getting dangerous again, and I couldn't handle it on my own. I'd been attacked in the car. It's very scary, and we were having more and more stuff happen at home. And one of the things that I do, in sobriety, I have this little mental thing that I do. I'm very tangible. I talk about, having different, like, spiritual experiments and things that I've done, and we can talk about that. But one of the things that I do today, when there is something that is very heavy or hard on me, that I realize, like, I'm not going to be able to do on my own, um, I picture picking up in my head a white chip. And so I picture, this symbol of surrender, right? And so I was laying in bed one night after a really difficult episode with my son, and I laid there, and I looked up at the ceiling, and I said, Jamie, it's just game over. It's game over, and you need to pick up a white chip. And so I actually, like, visualized myself doing that, and I had to make the decision to. I couldn't handle it. I knew I couldn't do it on my own, and I did have to make the decision to place him in a residential facility. Um, and that was beyond heartbreaking. And I will say, you know, he was being abused in that home. We found out later on that he was being abused in that home, and he was brought home immediately. But I
How
didn't
did you
drink
find
over that.
out?
It was rather apparent. There were physical signs of abuse. So um, so he was being starved. There was a lot. But yeah, so but I didn't drink when I put him in the home. I didn't drink when I found out. I didn't drink when we celebrated bringing him home. These I can show up today as the mother that I need to show up as, whether it's an amazing day or not. I have that ability today, and I'm just so incredibly grateful for that. So
So is he at home now?
he is,
Like you didn't
yes.
you didn't find another place for him?
No, the behaviors have we've done some medication adjustments, and it's been several years since then, and he's doing much better, and he is home with us, and right now we're just going to do everything that we can to keep him home with us.
So tell me about meeting your current husband.
So yeah, you know, when I got, so yeah, I was still like batshit crazy when I showed up, despite not drinking for a while, and still still always trying to fill that hole inside. I joke, I say I tried to fill the hole inside with food, booze, and husbands. And so, early on in sobriety, I had no interest in dating. While obviously while I was going through my divorce, I mean, it was like the last thing on my mind. But eventually, Once I was given the green light to be able to do so, then I was, now I want to prove like I'm worthy, right, of a relationship again, and aren't I desirable? And so I started dating again, and that was a train wreck, to say the least. Putting up with lots of, well, I ventured into online dating for about 2 seconds. I started looking at the apps, and I mean, here I was, in my mid 40s, and I've never been on dating apps or anything like that, and I was completely horrified. I had no idea what was going on in the world and what's out there and how people do this, and I just wanted to meet someone in the wild. And so I like shut my phone, and that was that. And so I just hope that maybe I would meet somebody, just naturally, organically. And so there were a bunch of mishaps along the way. But then I met my husband, at a sobriety function.
Oh, people go to
And
those.
they do, yeah. They go to those. And what was amazing was, just before I met him, I went out and I had this conversation with my higher power. Um, this I had developed this personal relationship, with my higher power. There was a specific day, where I knew for sure that my higher power was listening, and I'd love to tell you about that in a minute. But I went out on this bench that I have. When people told me to start praying, um, I thought, okay, I need to really get into, I need to take this very seriously. And as I mentioned, I'm very tangible, and I've got to have a set way of doing things. And so I got this bench, and I called it my God bench. And I would go out and I would sit on this bench very early in the morning when my kids were sleeping, and I'd go out and I'd say, please keep me sober. Hi. I'd talk to the trees. I'd look up, that it was dark outside, and I'd wave, and I'd talk, and I'd go, hey, I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if you're out there, but I was told that I need to be praying. And so I'm out here, and I feel really stupid, but they told me to pray. So I'm going to pray. And I said, I just started with please and thank you. And so further on in my sobriety, I went out on this bench, and I was talking with my higher power after a total disaster with someone I was dating. And I said, you know what? I give up, man. I give up. You can have this. I'm not good at relationships. I see it finally. And I recognize that maybe, like, I'm okay with being alone finally. I was finally okay with me, I was, my sponsor had told me in one of the relationships I was in, she said, Jamie, this is not how you want to be loved, and this person's actions don't align with their words. And like, that was like a light bulb going off for me. I just thought like something was better than nothing, and today I've come to realize that, like, for me, as a confident, sober woman who's like good with her, nothing is better than just something, for me. And so I sat out on this bench, and I said, I give, man, you can have it. And I said, if I'm supposed to be alone, I'm good with that. I think I'm good, and just a few days later, I met my husband at a sober function, and we do this life together, and it's really amazing. We're on the same spiritual path, and it's really beautiful.
That's so awesome. What a great, and everything's good with the kids today.
The kids are amazing. They're both doing so well. My older son has aged out of services. He's turned 21, so we're in the process of finding a day program for him. It's very difficult in our area. I think also, just nationally, there are not a ton of services. Some states are better than others, but he is, as I said, profoundly affected by the disorder. So he needs a lot of additional supports to be able to go to some of these programs. So that's something that we're currently investigating and trying to get the right people in place for him to be able to do that.
Got it. And
Yeah.
so you have a website, and it's Jaime, Jaime, Hrobar, which is starts with an H, which you can find this on my episode description. But you have like some support stuff that you do off of your website for people? You have a blog. Tell me about what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. I have a blog on Facebook. On It's called Homebound and Healing, where we talk about our journey with autism and also some of my recovery. I lead some workshops with women in 12-step recovery, and I speak about my recovery a lot. I'm really passionate about this. I have a beautiful life today because of sobriety. So I do try to share that.
So can people find your Facebook blog off of your website
Yes,
too?
yes,
Everything's
there's a link
connected.
there. Yes.
If people want to contact you, I know that you have contact information on your website. I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story with the podcast. And it's been, wow, what a story. Pretty epic. I feel like,
Thank you.
there's so much hope and like inspiration in just sharing these stories without we feel shame about it at the time, but when we share it, I think it releases some of that and helps other people to go like, oh, we're just all out here. We're just all out here doing our best, whether you're still drinking, whether you think you have a problem, whether you're just investigating, whether you do, like you're not alone. I think that's what's important. So anyway,
Absolutely.
thank you again. And
Thank
I'm
you.
going to have your husband on soon, who sounds like he has a pretty crazy story as well.
He does for sure. Yeah, you'll be in for a treat.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Feeling like life is good, yeah. Life is good.